we will fall into shambles, Madam Speaker. Thank you very much.
Member for Tableland.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Now, I am flabbergasted by what the government is bringing to this debate today. It's apparent to me that their ears are not working, or they just simply do not understand what corporal punishment is. And I will distinctly repeat what it is. Corporal punishment is a form of punishment that inflicts pain on a child, i.e. a lash, as a form of a retribution for a wrong action or to curb their discipline, Madam Speaker. And that is linking actions to consequences. Now, Madam Speaker, our member for Faizabad and Barataria talks about violence breed violence. But, Madam Speaker, they do not understand that corporal punishment is not violence. Violence is the definition of violence is the deliberate and intentional use of physical power to a person that may cause injury or death. And, Madam Speaker, nowhere in the definition of corporal punishment did we talk about injury and death, Madam Speaker. That is not what we are doing here. Now, Madam Speaker, since you're on the topic of violence, I would like to bring in bullying into this because bullying is a form of violence, Madam Speaker. Now, bullying is the deliberate and persistent action that causes mental instability and physical injury on a child. Now, Madam Speaker, I would like to propose to you a question. I am sure you would want your child to go to school in a safe environment. Now, if your child is going to school and is being bullied, Madam Speaker, every single day of her life, Madam Speaker, do you think that the best way of punishment for that child is detention or suspension or having to sit down in lectures for several hours listening to the programs that the government has implemented in the school, Madam Speaker? No, Madam Speaker, you want justification for your innocent child. Madam Speaker, these programs and solutions that the government has implemented, Madam Speaker, has not been working. It has not been scaring off these bullies, Madam Speaker, and it has not deterred their actions yet, Madam Speaker. What will deter their actions, Madam Speaker, is having a high level of power in the school that will show that they have control over the
member be
bullies
willing
in the
to give way?
No, no member. I'm pressed for time. Thank you. I'm sorry. Now, yes, Madam Speaker, a high level of control, Madam Speaker, to show who is boss in the school, Madam Speaker, and that is the teachers, Madam Speaker, not the bullies over your child, Madam Speaker, the teachers over the bullies. Madam Speaker, so we now can see that corporal punishment is an effective way in combating bullying and, by extension, the violence in the schools today. Now, Madam Speaker, I know some of my members have already talked about this, but I would like to bring it back up, Madam Speaker, and I quote from the news there, Madam Speaker, of the 14-year-old child of Pleasantville who was beaten and bullied by two boys from his school, Madam Speaker, and suffered a fractured skull. Now, it went on to say that in light of this latest act of bullying, First Vice President of the Tutor, Devanan Sinanan, is calling for the urgent intervention of government in dealing with the issue of bullying in the nation's schools. There was a marked increase in violence in schools following the ban of corporal punishment, Sinanan noted. He lamented that nothing was put in place since the removal of the form of corporal punishment and students were taking advantage of this situation. Not to Mr. Sinanan, I say to you, bring back the corporal punishment in the school. It is an effective way. Now, the school is responsible for the child just as the parent is responsible for the child, Madam Speaker. You cannot say that a teacher in school cannot administer a lash to a child to curb their discipline just as a parent at home would administer a lash to their own child to curb the discipline in the homes, Madam Speaker. These teachers should be able to do just the same thing, Madam Speaker, because they are responsible for the child in the school. Now, Madam Speaker, the article of the Newsday was printed just April 20th, 2012, Madam Speaker, and that was just last year, Madam Speaker. And that is proven, Madam Speaker, that everything the government has implemented since the banning of corporal punishment 13 years ago in the year 2000 has not been working, Madam Speaker. Even tutor is crying out, Madam Speaker. Minister of Education, tutor is crying out. What do we want to wait until a child is dead, Madam Speaker?
Honourable members, the speaking time of the honourable member for Tableland has expired.
Madam Speaker, I beg to move that the speaking time for the honourable member for Tableland be extended by 3 minutes.
Honorable members, the question is that the speaking time of the honorable member for Tableland be extended by 3 minutes. All in favor say aye. Any against? I think the ayes have it. Honorable member, you may continue.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. So as I was saying, Madam Speaker, are we going to wait until a child is dead? But this has already happened to Madam Speaker. Do you want your child to die? I think not, Madam Speaker. So therefore, I think that corporal punishment is the most effective additional solution that can be implemented into the nation's schools to curb the indiscipline and the violence. I thank you, Madam Speaker.
The Honorable Minister of Foreign Affairs.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. First of all, I don't know if it's just me, but the opposition seems to quite love newspaper articles, Madam Speaker. But my question to them, would you believe everything out of a newspaper article? The cinema guide in a newspaper article is wrong nearly 95% of the time. So could you please go directly to all those cases you have been speaking to and bring a quote? Thank you. Madam Speaker, first of all, corporal punishment is like an experiment, and an experiment needs a trial. It was given its trial, and in this same chamber, we had all gathered and decided that it would be banned, Madam Speaker. So my question is, why reintroduce, as my fellow member Faizabad said, why reintroduce something that was banned 13 years ago? Is that not going way back? Is that not going to the old ways, which the member of Taparo seems to love, which I disagree with? Madam Speaker, if we were to go back to the old ways so, then shall I turn off this mic and attach a can with a string towards you and myself? Might I ask that, Madam Speaker? Madam Speaker, another observation of opposition, they have been quite observant, is that they have been given numerous amounts. Crimes has risen after 2000. To compare something from then on now, you need statistics and facts from then, and they have brought nothing before when corporal punishment was there. They have only brought it after corporal punishment was banned. I think they are very confused of what they are debating. Madam Speaker, I'd like to bring the attention to everyone present here who already knows this, that the watchwords of the country is discipline, tolerance, and production. Nowhere have I ever seen in any place discipline brackets beat them real bad, tolerance and production. You cannot expect to beat somebody to get discipline. They will just be even more indisciplined.
Will the honourable member give way?
Honourable member, no, I'm pressed for time, and you also need to stand when you're asking to give way. Madam Speaker, I would like to go to, if you hit a child, they would not want to come back to school. They barely want to go to school as you speak. If you hit a child, they would not want to go back to school, Madam Speaker. And if the child is not in school, they might not even tell their parents. Where would they go? I'm assuming they would go to the drug blocks. I'm assuming they would line around where all those club people are. And I'm assuming they would be the next drug pushers. So the answer is, Madam Speaker, that it is not if corporal punishment is not reintroduced that there will be more criminals and more...
Is the honourable member willing to give way?
No, member, I am not willing to give way. You can ask. Right. The answer is, Madam Speaker, that it is not if corporal punishment is not reintroduced that there will be more drug pushers and murderers, but it's if corporal punishment is reintroduced that there will be more drug pushers and more persons just dilly-dallying around Trinidad and Tobago. And if that is the kind of society that the opposition wants, I pity them. Madam Speaker, I have a quote from a parent of a child going to El Dorado West, whose name would rather be confidential, stating, "My daughter had been buffed harshly by a teacher for not bringing a textbook and then severely taunted by peers in school and social websites, leading her to inflict pain upon herself. Madam Speaker, this speaks for itself. If a child is merely buffed, and that is actually speaking to them in an aggressive manner, and that child, he or she, leads to inflict pain upon her or himself, what will happen if a teacher has the audacity now to come, and not just the audacity, they have the right, because the opposition wants to bring it back legal, to beat a child in front of a class? I could imagine the tones on Facebook. I could imagine the laughter, and I could imagine what that child would want to do. I am thinking suicide, and if that is what the opposition wants, a higher rate in suicide, I pity you again. Madam Speaker, another quote, because I'm fascinated by quotes, is that a child from Queen's Royal College, again, nobody names.
Members, the speaking time of the honorable member for Arima has expired.
Madam Speaker, I beg to move that the speaking time for the honourable member be extended by a further 3 minutes.
Honorable members, the question is that the speaking time of the honorable member for Arima be extended by a further 3 minutes. All in favor say aye. Aye. Any against? I think the ayes have it. Member, you may continue.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I see I'm pressed for time. Madam Speaker, as I was saying, my quote from a student from Queen's Royal College stating, I obtained 96% in my math exam, and my teacher gave me 1,000 lines to be written as such, and I quote, I can do better with more studying. Madam Speaker, we are talking about 96% here. If a teacher has the audacity to give a child lines from getting over 90%, imagine what he would do or she would do if he were allowed a chance to hit that child. Madam Speaker, since the opposition has brought no definition of bullying or violence from a regional or Caribbean, might I add, website, I would like to do so. Bullying, as defined by the Ministry of Youth and Gender Youth Affairs, as any mean word, look, sign, or act that hurts a person's body, feelings, or things. Violence is defined as doing harm to another, whether physical or mental. Under this definition, bullying would be considered a form of violence to induce fear. Madam Speaker, it seems like the opposition are bullies. They want to induce fear in a child in order to get what they want. I disagree. The government of Trinidad and Tobago disagrees with this, and we shall not stand for it, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, in closing, I would just like to say, well, I heard a member of La Hokata, which quite amused me, say it, and I quote, parents and guardians are given the right to administer corporal punishment. Why are teachers not given this right? This is most amusing because I know there are 2 hands to clap in making a child, and I do not believe a teacher is one of them. Why does the opposition, think that they can hit this child? I am most bewildered by that. I thank you, Madam Speaker.
Member for Laventille East.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I am highly disappointed in the flimsy and inconsistent arguments put forward by the government. As the Chief Whip of the opposition, I stand by this motion. This is not a fly-by-night motion, right? It was carefully thought out because the notion of corporal punishment is a topical global issue. Now, Madam Speaker, I invite the government to take a microscopic look at the disparities in our generation. On the one hand, there's the older generation that is respectful. And on the other hand, there's the child of today that is carefree, reckless, and disrespectful of those in authority. And Madam Speaker, I'm going to tell you why. The MP for Arima and I actually have something in common because I have quotes too and I like them. An extract from an interview with a student who would also like to be confidential. We like to sit down in the back of class and make jokes and laugh loud. We love it when Miss gets vexed with we. We really don't care because she can't do we nothing. That is the problem at hand, Madam Speaker. she can't do nothing. Hence, it is explicit that the reintroduction of corporal punishment in schools would serve as a deterrent to eradicate disruption, destruction, delinquencies, and the decrease in graduating nation schools.
Would member be willing to give way?
No, thank you. Press for time. Madam Speaker, corporal punishment is not violence. Corporal punishment is not abuse. Do not twist our words. It is a tool of discipline that has its time, it has its place, and it has a record of working in the past. Now, with the reintroduction of corporal punishment, the incumbents are obviated from engaging in bad behavior. Now, this change in behavior, it begins with the instinctual connection with bad behavior and pain, cause and effect. This will foster an avoidance through logical reasoning. Now, Madam Speaker, it appears that the government is insinuating that we are so tribal, as the MP for Barataria, someone just loves to use, that we are so tribal in our mentality, and that we would not surpass a limited capacity and mature and grow and realize and reason that there is a correlation between restraint of misdemeanor and corporal punishment. Now, some of the members from the government had the audacity to stand and make reference to the United Nations. The United Nations, just like any of the other international organizations, it is solely run by developed countries. For example, the UN, P5, and this is relevant, P5, China, UK, US, Russia, France. They are developed. Trinidad and Tobago, developing. What works for them might not work for us. We have, Madam Speaker, we have a different history, different literature, different geography, different norms, different culture. As I said, what works for them did not work for us. 13 years has shown this. Madam Speaker, why this government like to play copycat? It is beyond me. Madam Speaker, as leaders, we have the responsibility to protect the sovereignty of the citizens. And if, as leaders, we cannot do that, then God be upon us. I rest my case.
The Honorable Minister of Housing and Urban Development.
Madam Speaker, it seems to me that there must be some rift or some sort of deficiency in the language and speaking pathology of the opposition. Because I still cannot come to terms. I still cannot understand why the members for La Hoqueta
Overrule, member, you may continue.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Yes, as I was saying, Madam Speaker, I cannot come to terms to understand why the member for La Hoqueta and Tableland would think that it is the right of a teacher to corporally punish a child. Madam Speaker, according to the United Nations, again, after their last report from the Conventions of the Right of a Child, and I quote, "It is the sacred right of parents," I repeat, it is the sacred right of parents to punish their child, and corporal punishment may be used if they see it fit to do so. Madam Speaker, all of this talk from the opposition about, what is corporal punishment and definitions of bullying, but nobody has paid specific attention to what is the rights and the rules
Madam
and
Speaker, point of
responsibilities.
order to the 3-6. The member is reading from a speech in her hand there.
Overrule, member, you may continue.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Apparently, everyone in the opposition is thinking that I'm reading from script. That is not reading from script, honorable members. As I was continuing, the United Nations went on to state in that same said document, and I quote again, the rights of a teacher is to simply teach or educate a student and foster learning in the classroom or any environment that is conducive to learning. And by no means, Madam Speaker, was corporal punishment mentioned in that description. Madam Speaker, as I said before, the member for La Hoqueta mentioned that it is the right of a teacher to corporally punish a child. I don't know where he got his information from, but I want to ask a question. Has the opposition even examined the repercussions of such actions by teachers? Have
Is the
they
member willing
really?
to give way?
Madam Speaker, I'm on my feet. Honorable member, you had your time. I have my time as well. As I was saying, Madam Speaker, has the opposition been able to examine these repercussions and the actions by teachers if corporal punishment were to be reintroduced into the system? If a teacher corporally punishes a child by inflicting physical harm to that child, it causes more than physical pain, Madam Speaker. It also causes emotional and and psychological harm to that child. Madam Speaker, psychological and emotional harm, I'm sure no amount of apology would be able,
Standing order 43-1, tedious repetition.
Honorable members, the continuous point of order is interrupting the member from continuing her speech. I ask to refrain from the excessive point of orders, please.
Yes, Madam Speaker, as I was continuing to say, the fact that corporal punishment would not only cause psychological and emotional harm to a child, Madam Speaker, no amount of apologies can rid the ridicule and the embarrassment that a child will face after being corporally punished in front of a class of students, in front of their friends, Madam Speaker. No amount.
Honorable members, the speaking time for the honorable member for Laventille West has expired.
Madam Speaker, I beg to move that the speaking time of the honourable member be extended by a further 3 minutes.
Honorable members, the question is that the speaking time for the honorable member for Laventille West be extended by 3 minutes. All in favor say aye. Aye. Any against? Nay. I think the ayes have it. Honorable member, you may continue.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. As you see, we are all pressed for time here by the points of orders that have been drawn before. But I will continue to say that as far as I'm concerned, everyone here is human. I am human. You are human. Everyone in this honorable house is human. And by right, I believe that we have something called human rights. And I will allow me to quote, human rights are the rights of both adults and children existing in developed and developing nations, which are supposed to prevent us from being free from all forms of abuse, Madam Speaker. And that includes corporal punishment, Madam Speaker. It includes corporal punishment being administered onto children because it is a direct violation of the rights, the universal rights of a child, Madam Speaker. And Madam Speaker, I would go on to say that if the opposition is proposing the reintroduction of corporal punishment into the school system, we are by no means going to move from developing status, as the Laventille East member mentioned. We will remain at developing status and will never reach developing status. And Madam Speaker, to be really honest with you, if it is that we cannot move from developing status to a developed status, then we have failed as a people, we have failed as a nation, and we have failed as a government and opposition and the future leaders of Trinidad and Tobago. Madam Speaker, I would like to urge the opposition to think about these repercussions seriously, the real repercussions that would that would be added to the reintroduction of corporal punishment, because they seem to be reiterating that dream with this motion that is completely baseless and it holds no ground. Madam Speaker, and as I add again, if the opposition and the government cannot see eye to eye, then may God really help us. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Member for St. Joseph.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I cannot seem to understand the most profound and yet flagellating statements made by the members of the government. Madam Speaker, on the contrary to what the Honourable Member for Barataria said, they were elected into this Honourable House back in the date 2010. However, Madam Speaker, it must be noted that it is so imperative to this debate, Madam Speaker, that recently in the last 2 elections, Madam Speaker, was the government successful? Madam Speaker, it is a saying that the voice of the people is the voice of God. And Madam Speaker, as quite a few members on the government seem to suggest that God help us, Madam Speaker, then God really has to help us. Madam Speaker, the member for Faizabad wanted to find out what do the members of the opposition have in place if a teacher violates this use of corporal punishment. Madam Speaker, according to the Children's Act, Section 3, Subsection 1, convictions are in place, Madam Speaker. There are fines of $10,000, $5,000, Madam Speaker. I cannot seem to understand where's the logic here, Madam Speaker. Clearly, there's a problem with the government's sense of thinking, rationalizing, and understanding the statements made by this worthy opposition. Madam Speaker, I would leave all of those things for another day. Madam Speaker, I would like to focus on the psychological effects of corporal punishment. Madam Speaker, according to the Oxford Dictionary, an effect is, and I quote, a change which is the constant or consequence of an action. And psychology is the scientific study of the human mind and its functions, especially those affecting behavior in a given context. Madam Speaker, then it can be notifiable to mention that a psychological effect is that change which is a result or consequence of corporal punishment on the scientific study of the human body, its functions, and the behavioral patterns of human being. Madam Speaker, I do acknowledge the fact that there are numerous studies worldwide to prove that some degree of fear caused by corporal punishment has resulted in the anxiety levels of students in schools to be aggravated. However, Madam Speaker, that is not in context with what the members of this opposition is proposing. Madam Speaker, when we say corporal punishment, we are inflicting pain, but not injury, Madam Speaker. And these things only occur, Madam Speaker, if injury is inflicted. Madam Speaker, I would like to refer to Pavlov's theory of classical conditioning. And in this theory, Madam Speaker, Pavlov said that classical conditioning is a form of learning in which the conditioned stimulus occurs another learnt stimulus in the unconditioned one. Madam Speaker, I would further explain what I'm saying here. A condition, when we refer to conditioning, Madam Speaker, it's the relationship between two stimuli. And the stimulus is that which causes a response in an organism. Madam Speaker, Pavlov used the analogy of a dog. And I know members of the government will ask, why compare us esteemed human beings to that of a dog? However, Madam Speaker, the Pavlov's theory is applicable to all living things. And so is a dog, he's a living thing, or she's a living thing, and so are we as human beings. Madam Speaker, Pavlov said that dogs, when they hear the sound of a bell,
Honorable members, the speaking time for the honorable member for St. Joseph has expired.
Madam Speaker, I beg to move that the speaking time for the honorable member for St. Joseph